I'm Heather Craig. I'm a nurse. I work for NHS Lanarkshire in a service called Keep Well.
Okay. So thanks for coming along, Heather. What we wanted to talk about today was some of your work in engaging the Gypsy Traveller community.
I've been working with the Gypsy and Travellers for 3 years in Lanarkshire, and the work means I've got to know them a bit better as time goes on. Heather,
could you tell us a bit about the specific barriers that the travelling community would face in engaging with a programme like Keep Well?
They're a transient community, so they don't get to hear about the programmes such as Keep Well very readily unless the service is actually taken to them. And also, because they're not engaging with GP practices, Keep Well is predominantly a GP practice service, and unless they're registered with a particular practice, they may be missed out on the opportunity of going to something like Keep Well.
Are there any other barriers that they face in addition to those two that you've mentioned?
We have heard from some of the travellers when they've gone in to register with a GP practice, sometimes practices are not open to actually seeing travellers themselves, and also because of this they feel at a disadvantage and they don't access these services, so they would go to hospitals for treatment rather than GP practices, so they use it as an open door service, whereas they should use the community facility a wee bit more readily, which they don't tend to do, which is unfortunate.
So the fact that they move around a lot and they themselves feel a wee bit inhibited about registering a GP practice, these are two of the kind of main barriers that they face.
I would say so, and also sometimes some of the travellers have got literacy issues.
Right.
So when they're asked to fill in forms to join up with practice and they're faced with information that they don't understand or they can't read, that's a huge barrier, and quite often we found that a barrier when we've spoken to them ourselves, because we offer them information on our service which they'll decline because they can't read, which is unfortunate. So we've come to realise that is a problem that we've had to put a solution in for.
So Heather, that's great. You've told us a bit about some of the particular challenges that this group has faced. What we would like to know more about now is how over the past 3 years in NHS Lanarkshire you've been able to overcome some of these barriers and some of these challenges.
Because we've gone into the traveller communities time and time again, we've got to build up a good working relationship with a lot of the travellers, so they know us and they know what we're about and what we can offer them. Also, for travellers coming into the Lanarkshire area who don't know the services that can access, we've gone to meet with them. We've actually knocked on their caravan doors and introduced ourselves.
Right.
And that way they know what we can offer and what they're entitled to get health care for whilst they're in the Lanarkshire area, and we offer them the Keep Well service, where they may have missed out on that opportunity elsewhere, or they may have come from England and not had the opportunity to take part in something like Keep Well.
How have you delivered the screenings with them? Have they come into the practice, or have
No, we actually go into their caravan. We're invited in, so by being invited in, we feel quite honoured that they have accepted us in that way, because we were told when we had cultural awareness training that wouldn't be an option, but however we found it the opposite has happened. So we actually go in and deliver the Keep Well Health session there in their home, and that's been quite enlightening for us, and it's never been a problem I've found.
And the fact that you've built up a kind of trusting relationship over the last 3 years, has this transferred now onto the GP practices? Do people feel more comfortable now going and registering with a GP practice?
I would say it's still an issue for some travellers, and we ourselves have worked as advocates to actually go in and introduce a travelling family to a GP practice to see if the GP practice will take them on as a temporary resident if they're only in the area for a short period of time. And quite often if you go in and explain to GPs or the practice managers, there's never usually an issue, which is quite fortunate. That way the traveller can get healthcare services in a GP setting rather than a hospital setting, which is much more preferable.
Yeah. If somebody was just about to start out on a programme and they wanted to engage with the travelling community, what sort of tips or advice would you give them, Heather?
I would say if they just take the time, get to know the travellers themselves, don't be too pushy. Go and introduce yourself, knock on the caravan door, Tell the travellers what you're about, what you're trying to deliver, and you might find you will be surprised. You'll be easily accepted, because the travellers are people who like to be included. And a lot of the services that are out there, although they're very, very private people, we've got to accept that.
Yeah. So it sounds like a face-to-face approach would be a successful approach, rather than maybe sending them a letter. Or
letters don't work, because you don't know where that person's going to be and when they're going to be there, and whether they will read the letter or whether they'll be able to read the letter. So you really need to go and knock on doors, and word of mouth within the travelling community goes a long way too. So if you give us good service, you'll find the travellers will come to you, and will seek you out, and other service providers to travellers too will get to know about your service and see that you might be the right person for their patient or client to be put in touch with. So we've found word of mouth has worked really well for the Keep Well service within Lanarkshire.
Well, it sounds like, it's been a really successful way of engaging the travelling community. So thanks very much for coming in and telling us about it today.
Thank you.